Join us for this edition of Fairfield Focus as Dr. Tim McDermott from OSU Extension in Franklin County shares some little known facts about ticks and some of the diseases they carry that maybe you may not have known. Hi, this is Connie Smith with OSU Extension, and gosh, we're so pleased. I have been looking forward to this interview with Dr. Tim McDermott, Franklin County Ag Extension educator, but more importantly, you know all about ticks. And I've heard this presentation and I've talked about this we've had it in front of Master Gardeners, we've had it as a part of a Master Gardener training series. But for John Q. Public, Tim, graduation parties, summer weddings, a hike in the woods, we usually bring a friend home with us, don't we?
Anymore, Connie, what we found is the numbers of ticks have been increasing in Ohio, and the diseases that they vector have been increasing in Ohio as well. What has not been increasing in Ohio is the amount of outreach and education to let the public know that what we're encountering with ticks now is different than when I was a kid and I would be running around in the woods or in the park. You find a tick on you, it's gross, you pull it off, you squish it, you throw it away.
Yeah.
We didn't have that corresponding increase in some of these devastating diseases that we have nowadays with ticks.
And I've had people, for our listeners, after they've heard your presentation and you've enlightened us with ticks, they're like, he scared us. Well, you should be kind of scared, huh?
I go into every presentation looking to at least mildly terrify my audiences because I want to make sure that folks are taking this threat of disease seriously and that they're motivated to develop their own personal and family protective protocols.
Okay, so first of all, before I can develop my protocol, I kind of always need to know what do I have to protect myself against? How many ticks are there in Ohio?
So there's a whole bunch of different species of ticks in Ohio. There's hard-shelled ticks and there's soft-shelled ticks. The ones that are of consequence to humans, livestock, and companion animals are hard-shelled ticks, and there's 4 primary species here in Ohio. One of them is the brown dog tick. That's been around a long time. Another one is the American dog tick. More recently, in the last couple of decades, entered into Ohio is the deer tick, which is also called the black-legged tick. And then a relatively new tick into Ohio in the last 5 or 10 years is the Lone Star tick. Those are the 4 that are most commonly implicated in disease transfer, with the last 3, American dog, deer, and Lone Star being the 3 big ones.
Yeah, and like great pictures, you reference in a presentation, tickcounter.org for good identification pictures, correct?
There's a couple of great websites that are out there. The best website that I found, if you want background information, is tickencounter.org.
Okay.
And that is maintained by the University of Rhode Island. So it is university research and it is up to date. It has great information on identifying ticks, how to test for diseases if you have a tick on you, how to protect yourself, your family, and your companion animals, and where the numbers of ticks are increasing depending on what part of the country you're in.
Okay, so these hard-shell ticks that you mentioned, the dog tick, the deer tick, the Lone Star tick, what kind of diseases do they carry?
So all of the species of ticks in Ohio that we're worried about in that hard-shell tick family carry lots of different diseases. Not every tick carries every disease. Each tick has its well-known diseases that it carries. and then they'll carry a whole bunch of other ones. Most of the diseases that we worry about are bacterial diseases. They're gut bacteria that are inside ticks. Relatively new in the United States are viral diseases that are vectored by ticks. And then in the last 5 or 10 years, there has been an allergic syndrome that has been discovered that if you are bitten by the Lone Star tick and you react negatively to that bite, you can develop an allergy, but not to the tick bite. The components of the saliva of the Lone Star tick have some chemical similarities to mammalian muscle, and if you are unfortunate to become allergic to that tick bite carbohydrates, you can become allergic to mammalian muscle, so that when you eat beef or pork or venison, you would have an allergic reaction.
Are you kidding me?
No, it is, to me as a meat eater and a meat lover, with my favorite food being bacon cheeseburgers, a potentially devastating disease. And not to minimize that, I know a lot of people that have that disease, and it dramatically and radically affects their life, because you now have a disease that takes out a major protein component
Absolutely.
out of your diet.
Can you imagine being the guy that develops that, or the gal that develops that, has a freezer full of beef at home? I mean,
It's very common that it affects beef producers, quite honestly.
really?
When I spoke on this topic at the commercial pesticide applicator training, I had a beef producer from Gallia County came up to me and mentioned that there are several members of their beef producers group down in that area where Lone Star ticks are very common in grazing counties that have heavily wooded environments, which the Lone Star tick prefers. And he said that he has multiple of his colleagues that have that allergic syndrome now.
So I just am amazed by all of this, because how do you, a personal protective plan is something like I've heard about for years in spraying chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, you have to have the clothing, the gloves, you have to just protect yourself. And now here you come, Tim, with you need that plan for being outdoors and just making a few simple adjustments to your outdoor routine. Albeit a gardener, albeit somebody at a graduation party, or just enjoying a backyard cookout. What are some of the things that can keep us a little safer from these ticks and tick bites?
So Connie, awareness is your strongest part of your protocol. Knowing that you have this risk potential will allow you to develop some ways to make sure that you don't get bit by ticks ever, which is what I recommend. You don't want to get bit at all. First thing to realize is when we think of ticks, we commonly think of them as problems out in the woods, but that's not necessarily the case. Ticks can be in wooded habitat, or they can be in open grassland habitat, and it depends on the species. The American dog tick, which is very common in Ohio, prefers more of an open, grassy habitat, like a park or a pasture or a meadow. The deer tick and the Lone Star tick both prefer a wooded habitat.
Okay.
So make sure you understand that you don't necessarily have to go into the woods
Right.
to get a tick on you.
Well, and that's what I think is amazing, because, you just used to say, well, I remember my parents saying, we're going mushroom hunting now, long sleeves and long pants, and oh, we're going to spray you for bugs, and then being checked out when you got home that you didn't have a tick. Well, it could have happened in the backyard.
It could have. Your folks were way ahead of the game when back in the day that way. So when we talk about ticks and we want to understand how to protect yourself about them, realize that ticks are not insects. They're actually arachnids. They're basically spiders. They have 8 legs, 4 pair. They hunt by questing. So they take 2 pair of back legs and hold on to the branch or the leaf, and then the other 2 grab their prey as the prey walks by. So they don't run fast, and they don't jump, and they don't fly. They just grab you. Long sleeves, long pants, and boots are heavily recommended, ideally with light colors, because ticks are generally darker and you can spot them against
Oh,
the
okay,
light
sure.
background.
Mhm.
And then you do have a component where you want to apply some different pesticides or insecticides to make sure that you have something to assist you with that. And I brought a
Okay.
couple of different things here that are very common for folks to use. DEET, DEET is a repellent that is very commonly used to protect against lots of different insects you might encounter outdoors. Ticks are fairly resistant though. These are not the sissiest critters that we're going to encounter out in the woods. So if you're going to use DEET, which is only topically applied, and with all repellents, pesticides, or insecticides, make sure you read, understand, and follow the label. But with DEET, you need at least a 25% minimum applied, and that is applied topically to your skin.
Okay.
What is recommended in order to provide further level of protection is that you have permethrin applied clothing on when you're outside. And there's different ways that you can apply permethrin to your clothing. This is a spray. It is labeled for use on fabric, which is very important. Permethrin comes in lots of different uses. And this is applied to the pants or the long sleeves or the boots or the socks overnight and then left to dry. The Tick Encounter website has procedures on how to apply that.
Okay.
If you did not wish to buy and apply this yourself, you can purchase permethrin treated clothing from about any outfitter now. They have it from Walmart up to Columbia, REI, LO Bean, Tractor Supply, all sells them. And in fact, on the Tick Encounter website, there are links where you can box your clothing up, send them to companies, and they will treat them and send them back.
I'm just guessing here that you treat your own clothing.
I do treat my own clothing,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm just guessing. So let me ask you this. Let's say you have chosen the shirt, the pants, the socks that are going to be your outdoor clothing for your wood walk or wherever you're going to be. How do you handle that in your closet? Is it kept separately, or how is that clothing laundered, Tim?
So the nice thing about permethrin treated clothing is after you've applied it correctly and it's dried, there is no odor, there's no chemical residue that is going to
Okay.
be shed. It is bonded to those clothes. And properly applied, especially if you were to buy it from a professional outfitter that has applied it, it can last for multiple washings, 20, 30, 40 or
Really?
more.
Okay.
So what I do is I have my pasture pants or the pants that I wear out in the woods, and I have those labeled that I know that they've been treated with the date, and I just write that on a Sharpie on the tag so
Okay.
that I know to reapply over time.
Okay.
So I make sure that I'm protected.
Okay. So as we kind of wrap this up here, what you're saying is ticks have been around for a long time, number one. Number two, it seems like they're increasing in population. And number three, we as consumers or people who enjoy the outdoors just need to be aware.
Yes, my goal using our extension outreach is to talk to as many people that I can in extension or in public health organizations, schools, master gardeners, naturalists, to create as many first responders to get the word out so that we start to protect people, livestock, and companion animals from the potentially deadly diseases that ticks can vector.
And you're also talking our dogs, not just our children, our companion animals, because, for some of us, our animals are like our children, so we have to come up with a strategy for them as well. We're going to get into more in just a minute about what to do if, yikes, I found a tick. Now what to do next. My good friend Tim McDermott, Franklin County Extension Educator.